Heather Burke, and I'm an attorney up in Nevada City. And today I'm going to be giving a quick presentation on terroir-based appellations and what they are. I was going to give this speech sort of to the South by Southwest at the South by Southwest convention in February or March, whenever that was, and didn't get to do it. So in honor of the closing of the CDFA's draft Cannabis Appellations program comment period on May 6th, I think the one critical piece of information that needs to get out is the importance of terroir-based cannabis appellations and the industry consensus, really, at least in legacy producing regions, on this issue. So thank you for joining me today. I'm going to go through this pretty quick, and I'm going to try to keep it short. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Luminescent Farms. What's up? And let's get started. Okay, what is a terroir? What does that even mean? And what are terroir-based appellations, particularly in the cannabis context? That is, always a fun question. So terroir has been defined in the past as a specific geographical area where production takes its originality directly from the specific nature of its production area. Terroir is a system of human interactions between physical and biological environment, and a set of human factors within a space which a human community built during its history with a collective productive knowledge. That's kind of a mouthful, but the way that I conceptualize it is it's basically the taste of place. The terroir means the taste of place. It's a French term. And the taste of place can come from both the biophysical data, the climate, the soil, all that kind of stuff, but it also takes into account the human and really like the cultural, aspect of the product and how that cultural aspect and the biophysical expresses in the product. So there's elements of originality and there's elements of typicality. So we see originality in that there's innovation, there is humans bringing new insight, new knowledge. There's also change because of potentially climate change and just weather freak incidents of weather that have driven the product in new and unique ways. But there's also a typicality. There's some consistency there that we always see because still the expression of the product is informed by the place. So it's kind of a deep concept, and let's talk about it more with some pictures. Here we have our three little guys. We have our first farmer where he's not involved in the cultivation of the product. We have another one where the product is or the plant is being moved by humans, and then we have another one where the human is hugging the plant. So these are three different cultivation styles. The first one, as you can see, we have no human controls over breeding or the cultivation process. Sometimes in the cannabis context, it could no human controls could be referred to as a land-raised cultivar. A land-raised cultivar could be what we see like in India, where there's no human. In some of the places, there's no human interaction in the breeding process for a lot of the cannabis that grows wild and then is wild crafted by essentially Sufis and other folks who will mash it or press it into hash. But it doesn't have to be necessarily these situations where, like in India, the plant grows and it breeds back into itself so many times that the phenotypes or the expression of that unique plant will be very consistent. It's generally considered consistent. We have that sort of situation with cannabis and the way that it could be cultivated. But we also have, particularly in the United States, this like heavy human control over every aspect of the plant's life. So not only do the humans control the light, but they control the nutrients, they control, every single piece. And that is a very indoor kind of type of cultivation. We can do that also with mixed light 2, and I think even in some cases with mixed light 1, where the plant's unique way that it would express in nature aren't able to be expressed because the humans are breeding or cultivating for a specific purpose, such as high THC, a THC-centric cultivation and breeding practice. which is not necessarily bad. I think there's actually a really a place for that. It's allowed us in California cannabis to have some really exciting innovation in our products. And some of the knowledge that we have because of the cultivation where we've been able to control every aspect of the plant has allowed California cannabis, to become what it is. However, there is also a middle path between these two, either no human control or all human control. And that's where the plant and the environment work together to express the plant's true qualities. So that concept is called terroir. And that's basically the man, the farmer guy, and he's hugging his little, he's hugging his little cannabis plant there. So let's go to the next slide. The exciting thing about terroir is that consumers in many places in the world understand that terroir can be protected and shown in a product through a program called an appellation of origin program. An appellation of origin program is not always necessarily a totally terroir based. A lot of it depends on the type of product that's subject to the appellation. However, for the laws that would protect and indicate to a consumer that the product is expressing the biophysical factors as well as the human factors in its production, so that the humans that tended to it, the climate that it was grown in, the soil it was grown in, consumers generally will look for an appellation of origin designation on a label. And for most consumers, particularly those who are, connoisseur consumers, many of us understand that terroir is linked to a product via an appellation of origin certification. So why are terroir-based appellations important? One, here's our farmer guy, and our farmer guy is, tending his plant, and this could be a farmer gal, and in many cases it is. You could see my buyweed from women. What up? So, the farmer will be able to charge a higher price on retail for a product that is of a higher quality because consumers can trust that product came from that place. And so we now have the sourcing, designation on the product. And statistically, many consumer survey studies and all sorts of types of studies show that consumers respond to that. So we often see a mark on a product. We know that mark means something to us. And so it builds our trust, and we are more likely as a consumer base to go and pull that off the shelf. So the farmer knows that. So the farmer can sell his product to the retailer at the higher price. And the retailer then can pass it on to the consumer. The consumer is going to be willing to pay a higher price because they can trust the product source. And what we're seeing in a lot of modern culture, particularly after this massive disconnection from our source in a global supply chain, is that humans and consumers are starting to say, hey, I want to know where that came from. But not only where it came from, I want to know who made it. I want to know how they made it. I want to know when they made it. That's important to me. And so consumers will consistently choose that product. And what that brings to us, the deliverables back, is the consumer bringing that back to that value back to the farm. Here's some more, and I think that my little video is in front of my, I want to hide that. There we go. Sorry. So some of the deliverables back, environmental sustainability. If what we're presenting in that product is that our product is environmentally sustainable and that's certified via the appellation of origin program, also consumers paying higher prices allows us to have rural economic development. And so what we see is that consumers will develop a relationship with a product. They want to come, they want to do a tasting on site. When they're here, they're staying in our hotels, they're eating at our restaurants, they're going to our wineries. And so it actually allows more economic, more financial money to come into our local and predominantly rural economies and to stay here. And that gives a regional boost for the entire, reputational boost for the entire region. And then that economic value is tied back into the soil, into the land, and goes back up to the farmer. So his or her product is worth more But at the same time, the land, because the product is tied to the land is worth more, which means that we are able to give something bigger and better to our children, to the next generation, and increase that value in that way. So it's really a beautiful ecosystem. Okay, so why are terroir-based appellations important? Just a couple of other bullet point. Heightened consumer trust due to the exclusive or essential link between the product and its source. So there's a causal link there, which for attorneys, a causal link is something that we all know. We had to learn it in law school, but, for those of us that don't have legal training, a causal link means just simply that like something caused something else. And so with the appellation program, if the biophysical and cultural information or, factors was the exclusive or essential cause of the product's higher quality, which we know that it often, we know it is, then that consumer is going to say, hey, I have more trust in that. I'm more willing to pay more money because in my mind, I can defend that this product is worth this additional price. My favorite piece of appellations, and the reason that I am such a fan of terroir-based appellations, is because appellations can protect traditional knowledge by codifying the data through production standards or practices, and they keep the ownership of that knowledge within the community. In California cannabis, particularly in our legacy producing areas, we have such value in what we know about how cannabis is cultivated. And if Big Ag got a hold of that, which they want to and they're trying to, they will be able to co-opt it and make money off of it and suck or extract those resources, that knowledge out of our communities. And so we want to keep that in. If we do that, we can, or in order to do that, one of the best vehicles to do that in my mind is through appellations, where we can actually codify that these are our standards, these are our practices, and then be able to tell that to the consumer. And then no other person, no other company out there can co-opt it because we've codified it. This is the standard. This is the term. This is what it means in these circumstances. And other people using that will have to look at our standard that we've set there. So it's really important for us because we have a lot of value. A lot of people, outsiders, want that value, and we need to be very cognizant of how much that's worth. And if we give it away, I don't even want to say if we give it away. We just don't have to give it away. We can keep it, and we can keep it through the appellation program. Another piece that I really love is the increased land value for farmers that are in the appellation and even really near the appellation, not just necessarily in the appellation, because the value of the product is tied to the soil itself. The value of the product is tied to the land in terroir-based appellation program. This is true for the entire region, even for those outside of the appellation boundaries. But if we say that because the product expresses this place in this unique and exclusive way, that makes the land even more valuable. So go to Bordeaux, France, and try to buy a 20-acre farm. Good luck. You know what I mean? And I think that is another big piece that we should be looking at here in terms of raising our land values for our cannabis farmers, who are generally the hardest hit by the regulatory transition. And also farmers just in a global supply chain always have the lowest profit margins, and in some cases could be a new, I've heard arguments that many contract farmers for global supply chain type of businesses are a new form of indentured servitude. So we don't have to do that, though, if we have this program where we can link our product to our place in this unique way. One of the things I think is really great is that terroir-based appellations are suited to an international marketplace because an exclusive or an essential link harmonizes with intellectual property rules. Intellectual property, particularly in an international concept, is very complicated. The United States is party to some deals and not party to other deals. Those deals are often vulnerable because we have a volatile executive branch right now. However, there is no prohibition on California setting up a program that is terroir based, that is linked to the soil, that is linked to the terroir, right? There's no prohibition on that. So why not set it up right now? We hope that federal and international laws will fall. We don't know that they will. There's no guarantee that they will. There's no guarantee of anything in life anymore. That's why I'm drinking wine while I'm presenting. Yeah. But why not? What would be the purpose of setting up a program that's disharmonized with those rules, except to shoot ourselves in the foot? And so I think that we can do we can make strides in what we know is going to be our future, and maybe even in my own lifetime. This may not be, something that comes to the next generation. Like the fact that cannabis may be able to be traded in the national and international marketplaces pretty quickly here. Hopefully, that it could be pretty quick. And so I do think that we should harmonize with intellectual property rules regarding appellation of origin right off the bat. International rules regarding appellation of origin require an exclusive or an essential link between the place and the product. We can do that here in California. We're prime set up for it. Let's do it. Terroir-based appellations are more defensible. A non-terroir-based program may not be defensible if challenged, and the program really just loses its integrity in being able to authenticate that there is a link between the place and the product, between the source and the quality of the product. We say that Northern California cannabis is the best in the entire world, and I truly believe it is. We need to be able to prove that. We need to be able to show that there is something about our soil, our climate, our land, our people, our practices, our history, right? That shows up in our final product. And we all know it's there. A terroir-based program allows us to market that to the consumer, that huge value that's there. And a non-terroir-based program does not in the same way, because a consumer could rightly say, your cannabis inside these boundaries is the same as that cannabis outside that boundary. What's the difference? Right? You need to have that link there regarding the causal link, the terroir-based link, linking it back. And then the other thing I think is really important, particularly for attorneys, consultants, and even industry folks, anybody who's kind of fresh into the appellations and getting really excited about it because it's a great program. Yes, we should all be totally excited about it, but we have to be really respectful, I think, to the fact that folks in the legacy producing regions in the Emerald Triangle, the Sierra Nevadas, aren't the only legacy producing regions, but the primary ones that we think of. These folks have been working on terroir-based cannabis appellations since 2012 and 2013, maybe even before, and we don't know. So I think for those folks who are new to it and are just coming on and getting excited about this in the last couple of weeks, thank you. Thank you so much. Please, any comment that you submit to the CDFA or to any regulatory agency or to anybody anywhere about cannabis has got to take into account these long history of stakeholders who are going to be most affected by this, which is the farmers in the legacy producing areas. Those trade associations, those regional organizations, they are advocating hard for terroir based. And if folks who are brand new to this conversation come in and advocate otherwise, it gives me great concern. There is huge consensus here, and it's a very exciting time in California cannabis. So we want folks to come in. We want folks to be on that same, be on this path and be advocating for this wonderful and historic program. But we do have to be cognizant and respectful to the history that's come before us. Terroir-based appellations are supported by California Cannabis Statutory History or California Statutory History. We have, they first showed up in 2015 in MMRSA's language, the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act. Then they were enacted by the voters in 2016 in Prop 64. So it was in legislation, but then it was basically approved, I would say, by the electorate in Prop 64. And then it was cleaned up a little bit last year in SB 185. Some of the language, for instance, it used the term varietals instead of cultivars, which was, less specific. And so that was changed. And so now what we have is this statute. The CDFA shall establish a process by which licensed cultivators may establish appellations of origin, including standards, practices, and cultivars applicable to cannabis produced in certain geographical areas in California. So one of the things I think that's really important about this is that for wine regions in the United States, they do not really, not in a meaningful way anyways, regulate the standards that the wine growers, the grape growers, or the practices that the vintners use, or the type of wine cultivars, the grape cultivars that are used in each region. Sometimes it just happens that way because certain grapes grow better on certain, in certain geographical regions, but it's not regulated by the government. Here, the voters of California have asked for a program that regulates standards, practices, and cultivars. That is terroir. That means our electorate, the people of the state, have advocated for a terroir-based program or approved it via Prop 64. So I think that piece of statutory history is really, really important. We have no other program that's an appellation of origin in the entire United States, not in this way. And so it's really important that we know that the people have already spoken as to what they want, and they want a terroir-based program. And that is true by the language of them approving standards, practices, and cultivars. Okay, where we're at real quick, we have a regulatory packet. It was issued back in February. There was a 45-day comment period through the regular rulemaking process that was extended because of COVID that will end on May 6th. There is a public hearing. It is via the web, of course. I'm sure it's a Zoom thing that it requires registration. Please go on and check it out. Here's some of my concerns about the regulatory package, the draft package. They allow, but they don't mandate a terroir-based system. And I think that that is a detriment to the program as a whole. If a consumer knows that these folks are doing a terroir-based program in their appellation and these folks are not, then what does that mean? How does the consumer trust that the program is going to actually mean something? If they can't say that the program itself requires that it means something. If you want it to mean something, cool. If you don't want it to mean something, that's cool too. That's kind of how the program is right now. And so we have developed a significant consensus in the legacy producing regions to advocate for a terroir-based system. It's a very complicated analysis, and yet it's what we're all coming to after a lot of heart-wringing over the years. So, please take this into account. The draft regulations mix up the causal link a little bit. It should be between source and product as opposed to method of cultivation and source and method of cultivation. That's a little bit technical, but I think for folks who are starting to present on this program, that it's something they really need to be aware of. And folks who are considering drafting comments definitely need to be considered. There's no consensus for standards, practices, and cultivars within a region. So if we have like somebody over here that wants to do this and somebody over here that wants to do that, how can a consumer tell what's going on, right? If we don't mandate that there's some consensus within that region. The draft regulations allow for partially overlapping appellations, which I do not agree with. And I think most stakeholders don't agree with. Some might, but for the most part, I think most folks are disagreeing with the partially overlapping analysis. You have standards, practices, and cultivars in region 1. Then you have standards, practices, different standards of practices and cultivars in region 2. So you end up with a Venn diagram. We have region 1, region 2, where you could apply A or B. And then you have, region 2. Wait. Yeah, no, that would be region 3. And so that can be really confusing to a consumer. The whole point is so that consumers know product equals or comes from place, right? Product shows place. Product expresses place. And if they're like, what does that even mean? Because you can have two places overlapping, then it devalues the program as a whole. Additionally, the barriers to entry are pretty high. There's already a lot of like scientific analysis that has to go into a petition, but we also have a $20,000 application fee and a $10,000 amendment fee. So let's say you are working right now with your patent, attorney to figure out what cultivars are, working in your particular region, and you want to add a new cultivar because you've decided that, OG Kush was too played out, but now maybe after some years you realize it does really good in this region. And so you want to add like one strain, one cultivar to your appellation. And it's $10,000 to do that, so that's just ridiculous. What can you do to support a terroir-based appellation program? Hold off, slow down. Do not spend any money preparing an appellation petition until the program has been finalized. There are a lot of folks out there that are rushing to get it in. This is not a lightning rod. This is not a quick fix. This is a slow burn program. We need to go slow down. If you and your region are getting together and developing collaboration and consensus, that's amazing, right? It's totally what we want, but you got to slow down on spending a bunch of money to get in that. Right now, we're in community organizing phase. That's where we're at. As a community, we should be developing what our regions are in a broader consensus, and perhaps the industry, particularly in the legacy producing regions, can submit a multitude of petitions at one time, indicating the regions that we have an industry together, not just one little valley, but this valley, that valley, all of the different legacy producing regions. We can put that all together and file it at one time, or at least in a collaborative manner where we could set the stage for California cannabis for generations to come. Slow down. Oops. Okay, click. Okay. Engage with your policy and trade organizations to finalize a meaningful policy. We are still working with the agency. There's a lot going on. Please, engage with the trade and policy organizations. If you're out here developing cannabis appellations policy on your own, just in your own head, and you're going to go and submit comments to CDFA without going through the legacy producing regions who are most hardest hit by legalization, most hardest hit, the farmers in any freaking regulatory regime, cannabis or not, engage with the stakeholders. That is so important. So for any attorney, any consultant, anybody in the industry that is thinking about submitting comments, please, I beg you, vet these through your local trade and policy organizations. Vet these through the legacy producing regions. Please do not go out on your own. Here's some of the trade and policy organizations in the legacy producing regions. I wonder if you guys can see my little guy. There's my little guy hugging his plant there. So we have the Nevada County Cannabis Alliance, one of my favorites because I'm from Nevada City and I love the work that they do. They've done wonderful work for our local farmers. Humboldt County Growers Association, we're also a business supporter of them. They're doing great work on the appellations program. Mendocino Cannabis Alliance, super leaders. Please join if you are in that region. Trinity County Agricultural Alliance, who I absolutely love, doing great work. Sonoma County Growers Alliance, El Dorado Growers Alliance, International Cannabis Farmers Association, Mendocino Appellations Project, and Origins Council. Here's all their websites. Please check it out, call them, talk to them. Okay, to sum it up, the California Department of Food and Agriculture, the CDFA, one of the guys who's in their appellations team, he said this at the Emerald Cup in 2018. California will be a leader in cannabis appellations. As markets open up beyond state borders, everyone will want California cannabis. We will already have a process in place to protect the product reputation from our regional farmers. That comes from the state of California, right? We are in the final moments of whether we will be able to have a process in place that truly protects the product reputation for our regional farmers. That demands that we have a terroir-based program. So please keep that in mind. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it so much. Here's our contact information. Feel free to reach out. That's me and my business partner, Sarah Smale. She's the smart one in the family. And thank you so much. Let's see if I can figure out how to turn it off.